Hello everyone and welcome to another episode in the series of things you may have missed in The Witcher 3. This one is somewhat special because if I manage to release it on time, it marks the 9th anniversary of The Witcher 3 and 9 years since I started making videos about it. Speaking of which, I do have a rather massive playlist of potentially interesting stuff, so if you haven't seen any of those videos, feel free to take a look at the links in the description or anywhere else they might appear. Okay, without further lollygagging, let's get right into the list, which I'll probably round to 9, because, 9 years. But anyway, at number 1, we start with the very end of the game, specifically one of the bad endings of Blood and Wine, where Syanna murders her sister with a hairpin.
A hairpin might look like mere ornament, but plunged into an eye, it can be as effective as a blade.
The color of which, by the way, changes based on whether or not Syanna is about to kill her. But we've covered that already. Here's another small detail you may have missed here. You know how before attending Anna Henrietta's funeral, the lady who sells flowers reveals that white roses were the Duchess's favorites? Well, it seems she wasn't the only one who knew this, because a single white rose can be found lying on the ground in the royal gardens, exactly where Syanna dealt the killing blow. This is of course if you choose to return to the place after the ending, and it is that much easier to miss because ironically there will often be a band of musicians playing on this spot, trampling all over the rose, making it near impossible to see, although they do leave at times and then it's a lot more apparent. For this detail I have to thank a viewer of mine who shared it with me some time ago and who wished to remain anonymous. Which is fitting, I suppose, because the person who left the rose is also unknown, although I have my suspicions. Oh, and if you've seen my latest community post, yes, you can actually climb up Anna Henrietta's statue and observe Beauclair from above. Moving on to another detail, still in Blood and Wine, those of you who have been following my channel right around the release of the next gen edition should know that I found what turned out to be Henry Cavill's dog. It settles in the restored Devil's Pit if you get the good ending for the newly added quest, but it turns out there's another dog which may be more interesting than you thought. So over here in Toussaint, there is a small dog called, I'm gonna call it Potom, it's likely pronounced elsewise.
Potom.
Apparently it's a Hungarian word, and this dictionary here claims it means diminutive, like something small, but Google Translate says it means dot. So take your pick, both are somewhat suitable if you ask me. But here's something else interesting that you may not know. A viewer of mine by the name of David, who plays the game in Chinese, it would seem, left a curious comment about it. He even sent me a screenshot in which it can be seen that there is something written in brackets after the dog's name. And he claims, perhaps any other Chinese speakers can confirm or deny, that the stuff in the brackets says the developer's dog, or something along those lines, which gives us a better idea of who or what this dog may be a reference to. If any of the developers are watching, feel free to comment about it. By the way, now that I mentioned the next gen edition and Chinese, was it not only with the next gen that CDPR added Chinese localization for the game? I think it was. At any rate, I thought you might find this interesting. Moving on to number 3. Yet another small detail in Blood and Wine. By the way, there is just so much curious stuff in this expansion. I've already made like 10 videos about it exclusively, and there is still more. I'm even saving 1 or 2 things for the next episode. But for now, let's look at the fancy cemetery in Beauclair. You know, where the wife and husband ghosts argue, and all the Batman and Catwoman references. So, one of the crooked little crypts has a small sign. It's rather easy to miss, and Geralt can actually read it out loud.
Nuragus family crypt. How'd they fit 4, 6, 8 people in there?
Some googling suggests that the name is a reference to a small Italian town where they produce a certain wine grape of the same name, which would make perfect sense. There are other references to real-world wines and grapes in Blood and Wine, but something you may have missed is a glimpse into the true nature of the people who are buried here. Specifically that in life, they were all a bunch of dirty sluts. This is clearly inscribed on their tombstone. It may have been written afterwards by someone who knew them well, but one way or another, that is what the Glagolic inscription says. I believe I've already covered Milton's grave nearby in another video. That one had a weird sign as well. I believe it says "Mind the Gap." A much milder inscription, to be sure. And that's all for Blood and Wine. Time to move on to darker places and details at number 4. But before we continue, this video is brought to you by me, so if you're enjoying it, feel free to give it a like, perhaps subscribe to the channel if you haven't, or even, dare I say, consider supporting the stuff I do on Patreon or through the YouTube membership. Okay, back to the details. We find ourselves in Velen, an awful place. Some time ago, I made a video about a woman who appears to be eating her husband, and there are indeed cannibals that can be encountered throughout Velen, so I'd like to mention another one here. It's the guy you can find around this area. I've seen him on many occasions. He would just attack me and I'd kill him, and that will be all. But it turns out there's a bit more to him than it seems. Some of you may have missed the fact that he was busy doing something else earlier. He's initially inside this house, and when we approach it, he comes out. But while inside, it seems he too may have been eating a woman. In fact, he appears to have killed not only her, but the man who was inside the house and their dog too. Yet he doesn't seem to have even touched the fish on the stove. So a grim picture, to be sure, one that I wasn't fully aware of until recently, when a viewer of mine shared it with me by the name of Ellis, I believe. So thank you very much for this gruesome detail. And while on the topic of eating things, we move on to something else that is much tastier. Now, I'm sad to say that I've never played Portal.
I hate portals.
But even so, I've encountered the "cake is a lie" reference in multiple games. I think BioWare specifically loved this reference. I believe it's in both Mass Effect and Dragon Age.
Where is the cake? I was told there would be cake. The cake is a lie.
Players were jokingly misquoting the Sith code in Star Wars: The Old Republic.
Okay, I'm officially scared.
And all this supposedly originates from Portal. Those who have played it can share more in the comments, but we do have a nod to that in The Witcher 3 as well. It can be found during the quest for the Witcher mutations, called Turn and Face the Strange, the name of the quest itself being another reference. So during the portal section of the quest, quite conveniently, as you enter the portals that the statues are facing, after the first two on the first 2 levels, you will be able to spot this uniquely glowing portal, and that is where you must go to loot the special cake, which would permanently boost your health by 100 points. So not a bad thing at all. And you may be thinking, weren't we done with Blood and Wine? And the thing is, I got confused. When I was planning this video and making a list of things to talk about, I was under the impression that the cake was located in the Cheese Dungeon with the Emmentaler sword in Velen. But no, it's in the Witcher Mutations dungeon in Blood and Wine. Now for number 6, we're back in gloomy Velen, and I have a couple of small details for you here brought by a long-time viewer of mine, who is also a renowned artist and Nilfgaardian enjoyer. And here's what she had to share with us. First off is the existence of the physical map of The Witcher 3 within the game itself. Once again, I'm sad to admit that I do not own a physical copy of the game. In fact, I didn't even know that this map was part of the physical edition until several months ago. However, the point is that it can be seen within the game, lying on the large stone table in front of which the Eternal Fire Priest is praying in Velen. And upon closer inspection, it really is the same image. It's even folded halfway through. And the next small detail, which again involves the Eternal Fire, are the bells that can be heard ringing every day at 12 o'clock game time near the large Temple of the Eternal Fire in northern Novigrad.
This This murderer's a demon sent by vengeful mages.
If you listen closely, they can actually be heard from other locations in the city, including the central square.
Winds howling.
But they are indeed the loudest here, at the Temple of the Eternal Fire. It's a curious place, by the way, one that, outside of Series Escape, isn't really used all that much. Yet it is accessible and is full of NPCs. They have their praying schedules where people and priests march out to pray and back again. Several references can be heard as well. There are mentions of Triss and Menga, of the Carnal Sins quest, of the 5th Witcher book, Baptism of Fire.
Baptism of Fire.
Which fits the environment perfectly, and which, by the way, should be the basis of the next season of The Witcher show, whenever that comes out. I likely won't be watching it, but Baptism of Fire is a good book. It's where Regis shows up. So we're moving on with number 8. Recently, I told someone in my comments to check my details missed in the heist video for a couple of things I mentioned there, but it turns out that I never did. So I've been living in a lie for several years now, and it's time to correct this. There are several references to various things in Borsodi's auction house in Hearts of Stone. Some of them are rather obvious, like the Goblet of Fire, but at least a couple of them can be relatively easy to miss due to the battle in the vault itself, and then the urge to escape quickly. The first one is the Infinity Gauntlet. There's this plate gauntlet on a stand with 4 smaller coins on the knuckles and 1 larger one in the middle. There's also Excalibur, or the Sword in the Stone, if they're not the same thing, but I think it's the exact same one you see in Ermien's room, so not terribly interesting. And there is this peculiar effigy here, which absolutely seems familiar to me, but I can't quite put my finger on it. If anyone can guess where it's from, please share it in the comments. Also, feel free to check my Hearts of Stone videos. They're not as many as Blood and Wine, but they are some of my personal favorites. And we've reached the end at number 9, where honestly I simply decided to bundle up a bunch of things which are kind of small and I wasn't quite sure where else to include them, so here we go. While on the topic of Hearts of Stone, let me address something which occasionally pops in my comments. It's a theory that some people have shared which, while quite intriguing, is I think false. So you know that scene during the wedding where Gaunter O'Dimm is tormenting Vlodimir? He's eating an apple and the ghost is screaming in pain. People have suggested over the years that we can see, for brief periods and from the right angles, how Gaunter is literally biting pieces off of Vlodimir's head. However, the truth is, and this is not terribly obvious, but Vlodimir actually has a scar on the back of his head. It's always on his character model, as far as I can tell, and glimpses of it can be caught in earlier scenes. So, as cool as it may seem, I don't think this theory is true. Although, I suppose you could link the biting off the apple with the act of causing Vlodimir extra pain. Next up, going from Gaunter O'Dimm to the Unseen Elder, a small detail you may have missed in your encounter with him is that you can actually die if you delay drinking the Swallow Potion after he throws you away. You have plenty of time, but your health is dropping slowly, so you might literally die. Also, to this day, people still ask me if anything special happens if you drink black blood before this encounter. And sadly, no, it doesn't. Neither does anything interesting happen if you still have the mark from Gaunter O'Dimm. Alright, another thing I've been meaning to include somewhere is a small, I'm not sure if I should call it contradiction, more like a hit and miss. So you know how Keira Metz sends you to Phi Kyle to get Alexander's notes and all that? It is possible to go there and explore whatever the tower has to offer before ever being sent there by Keira Metz.
Blood. Many must have died here.
And initially the game correctly accounts for that by giving Geralt unique dialogue whenever Keira brings up the place.
The local peasants mumble incessantly about it, about the wraiths that haunt it. They claim none who go there return.
I managed to. But while on the island, I did sense something strange. How'd it come to be cursed?
That's what I don't know.
But then within the same conversation, Geralt is surprised that a mage lived in the tower, despite finding his logs earlier and actually commenting on his experiments and how they never would have happened if the conclave of mages was still in power.
Experimenting on humans. Never would have gotten away with it if the conclave were still in charge.
But he certainly didn't seem such a cruel man, judging by what a mage from the Isle told me.
A mage lived on the island?
So I find that a little weird. And speaking of Keira Metz, let's bring up Lambert for a moment. You probably know that some people have theorized that whenever Lambert talks about jumping from a lover's window, he's secretly referring to Geralt and Triss. You know, Triss being the lover and Geralt being the friend of Lambert's, whom said lover was currently in a relationship with. If you haven't, you can watch this video on the topic.
Damn.
However, other viewers have speculated that the friend in question might have been Aiden, the cat school witcher he's trying to avenge in the Following the Thread quest. My last video was about this quest, though not about the theory. However, it was brought up again in the comments, perhaps as a possible explanation of why Lambert might be feeling extra guilty. And honestly, I don't know, I never got that impression personally. I do think that it would be interesting if Lambert is referring to someone we know of. I mean, it's clear he doesn't have many friends, and he speaks in past tense, so who knows?
He was a friend. Didn't want to hurt his feelings.
Yeah, you're a true friend.
Right, men. Let's end on that.
Let me know what you guys think. Also, speaking of Lambert, have you noticed that he wears Geralt's armor from Witcher 2? And even if you have noticed it, it gives me an excuse to plug in that massaging scene, and then my favorite type of magic.
My favourite type of magic. Lesbomancy.
So with that, I believe we're done for now. Happy 9th anniversary to The Witcher 3, to the Witcher developers at CD Projekt Red, and to all players and fans. My own daughter is also 9 years old, so time flies, I guess, and I'm happy that many of you are still here with me, despite the many years. So I thank you very much for watching, thank you for your support, and until the next video, stay tuned and be good.